What if the very anxiety that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning is actually your greatest teacher? Think about this for a moment. You spend your days running from discomfort, fighting against the waves of worry that crash against your mind. But what if I told you that the storm you're trying to escape is the exact doorway to the peace you're seeking? Most people believe safety comes from avoiding what frightens them. They think strength means never feeling afraid. They imagine that enlightened beings float through life untouched by struggle. This is the great lie that keeps millions trapped in cycles of suffering. The truth cuts deeper. The truth whispers a different song. Every master who has ever walked this earth discovered the same paradox. The path to freedom runs directly through the center of what we fear most. The warrior doesn't avoid the battlefield, the warrior transforms the battlefield into sacred ground. Your anxiety is not your enemy. Your worry is not a sign of weakness. Your racing thoughts are not evidence that something is wrong with you. They are the raw materials of your awakening, disguised as obstacles. Consider the hurricane. At its edges, winds tear apart everything in their past. Trees bend until they break. Buildings crumble. Chaos reigns supreme. But at the very center, in the eye of the storm, perfect stillness exists. Complete calm. Absolute peace. You are that hurricane. Your thoughts are the spinning winds. Your emotions are the driving rain. And somewhere within you, untouched by any storm, lies your own center of perfect stillness. But here's what most people don't understand. You cannot reach the eye of the hurricane by fighting the winds. You cannot find your center by battling your thoughts. You cannot create peace by declaring war on your anxiety. The relationship you've been seeking with others, not that feeling of being truly seen, completely accepted, unconditionally loved. This relationship already exists. It waits for you in the only place you've never looked, within the depths of your own being. Yet everywhere you turn, the world teaches you to fear your inner experience. From childhood, you learn that certain feelings are unacceptable. Certain thoughts are dangerous. Certain parts of yourself must be hidden, controlled, or eliminated. You become a master of disguise, pretending to be okay when you're falling apart inside. You become an expert at performance, showing the world a carefully crafted version of yourself while your authentic self withers in the shadows. The exhaustion you feel, this bone-deep tiredness that sleep cannot cure, comes from living in constant conflict with your own nature. You fight against thoughts that arise naturally. You resist emotions that flow like rivers through your consciousness. You try to control an inner world that operates by laws older than civilization itself. It's like trying to hold water in your cupped hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The harder you grasp for control, the more chaotic everything becomes. Most people spend their entire lives trying to swim against the current of their own experience. They exhaust themselves fighting waves that would carry them to shore if they simply learned to float. But there is another way. Ancient wisdom points toward a different path entirely. The masters of old discovered something profound. True power comes not from controlling your inner experience, but from changing your relationship to it. Not from fighting the storm, but from finding the still point within it. This is the first key that unlocks everything. The art of inner listening. Right now, as you hear these words, thoughts are arising in your mind. Some agree with what I'm saying. Others resist. Some drift toward memories. Others plan future actions. This is not a problem to be solved. This is the natural movement of consciousness itself. Most people become identified with every thought that passes through their awareness. They believe they are their thoughts. They think they are their emotions. They mistake the waves for the ocean itself. But you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts appear. You are not your emotions. You are the vast sky through which emotional weather patterns move. Think of sitting beside a flowing river on a warm afternoon. Leaves fall from overhanging branches and float downstream. Some leaves are beautiful mice golden red, perfect in their form. Others are brown and withered. Some get caught on rocks for a moment before continuing their journey. You don't jump into the river to chase the beautiful leaves. You don't dive in to stop the ugly ones. You simply sit and watch as they all flow by. Each one temporary, each one part of the river's natural movement. Your thoughts are those leaves. Your emotions are the flowing water. And you mice, your true self, are the one sitting peacefully on the riverbank, witnessing it all with calm awareness. This witnessing awareness changes everything. When you learn to observe your thoughts rather than be consumed by them, space opens up. When you watch your emotions instead of drowning in them, freedom emerges. In that space between stimulus and response lives your power to choose. In that gap between what happens and how you react lies your liberation. Most people collapse this space. Something triggers them and they react instantly, automatically, unconsciously. They become like machines, programmed to respond in predictable patterns. But you can choose differently. You can learn to, you can create sacred gaps in the flow of reactivity. You can respond rather than react. This holy instant between trigger and response is where transformation lives. It's where anxiety transforms into awareness, where reactivity becomes responsibility, where automatic behavior gives way to conscious choice. The breath becomes your bridge between these worlds. Your breath connects the conscious mind with the unconscious. It links the voluntary with the involuntary. It joins what you can control with what you cannot. When anxiety arises, where does it live? In your thoughts about tomorrow's presentation. In your memories of yesterday's mistakes. Anxiety exists everywhere except the present moment. But your breath is always here, always now, always available. One conscious breath can interrupt hours of anxious thinking. 3 conscious breaths can shift your entire nervous system. 10 conscious breaths can transport you from the chaos of mental noise to the sanctuary of present moment awareness. But this is not about breathing techniques or special methods. This is about returning to the most natural thing you do, breathing with complete presence and attention. Feel your breath now. Don't change it, just notice it. Feel the cool air entering your nostrils. Feel your chest rising and falling. Feel the natural between inhalation and exhalation. In this moment, where is your anxiety? When your attention rests completely in the sensation of breathing, where do your worried thoughts go? They don't disappear. They simply lose their grip on you. This is what the ancient warriors understood. They knew that true strength comes not from a hardened heart but from an open one. Not from eliminating fear, but from breathing with it. Not from avoiding difficult emotions but from meeting them with presence and compassion. Every great spiritual tradition teaches the same fundamental truth: what you resist persists, what you accept transforms. Your anxiety doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be felt. Your sadness doesn't need to be cured. It needs to be honored. Your anger doesn't need to be suppressed. It needs to be understood. When you stop fighting your inner experience and start befriending it, miracles happen. Energy that was locked in resistance becomes available for creation. Attention that was scattered by conflict becomes focused and clear. Love that was conditional becomes unconditional. You begin to relate to yourself the way you would to a dear friend going through a difficult time, with patience instead of impatience, with understanding instead of judgment, with compassion instead of criticism. The in your head that has been your harshest critic can become your wisest counselor. The emotions you've been afraid to feel can become your greatest teachers. The parts of yourself you've tried to hide can become sources of authentic power. This is the paradox that transforms everything. The very qualities you've been trying to eliminate are often the ones that, when properly understood and integrated, become your greatest strengths. Your sensitivity, which you may have seen as weakness, becomes your superpower for understanding others. Your intensity, which you may have judged as too much, becomes your fuel for creating meaningful change. Your anxiety, which you may have experienced as torture, becomes your early warning system and your invitation to presence. But this transformation doesn't happen through thinking about it. It happens through direct experience, through choosing moment by moment to meet yourself with the same kindness you would offer to someone you love. Right now, in this very moment, you have the opportunity to begin this new relationship with yourself. Not tomorrow when you feel more prepared, not next week when life calms down, not next year when you figured everything out. Now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this sacred instant where past and future dissolve into the eternal present. The anxiety you feel is not your enemy mythos, it is the teacher showing you where your freedom waits. The relationship you've been searching for in the outside world already exists in the depths of your own being. The peace you've been chasing lives in the stillness that underlies all movement. You don't need to become someone else to find this peace. You don't need to fix what's broken or improve what's imperfect. You simply need to turn toward yourself with the same unconditional love that a mother offers her child. This is your invitation. This is your moment. This is your path home to yourself. The storm may rage around you, but you are learning to find the eye of the hurricane. The waves may crash against you, but you are remembering how to be the ocean itself. The thoughts may come and go, but you are awakening to the vast sky of awareness in which they all arise and pass away. You are not broken, you never were. You are not flawed, you never have been. You are a perfect expression of consciousness itself, learning to recognize your own true nature through the experience of being temporarily forgetful of it. And in this recognition, in this remembering, in this coming home to yourself, you find the love you've been seeking, the peace you've been chasing, and the relationship you've been longing for. It was always here. It was always you. It was always now. The strongest warriors never draw their swords against themselves. Think about that statement. While most people wage endless battles in their own minds, true warriors understand something profoundly different. They know that real strength comes not from conquering their shadows but from befriending them. Not from eliminating their fears but from dancing with them. You've been taught to see strength as hardness, toughness as rigidity, power as the ability to never bend, never break, never show vulnerability. But observe the mighty oak and the flexible bamboo in a fierce storm. The oak, proud and rigid, snaps under pressure. The bamboo, supple and yielding, bends almost to the ground yet remains unbroken. Which one demonstrates true strength? Your anxiety, your self-doubt, your moments of confusion. These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations to flexibility. They are opportunities to discover the bamboo nature of your own spirit. Most people live their entire lives fighting a war. They can never win. They battle their thoughts as if thoughts were invading armies. They resist their emotions as if emotions were foreign occupiers. They struggle against their own nature as if their authentic self were their greatest enemy. This internal warfare is exhausting. It drains your life force, scatters your attention, and leaves you feeling like a stranger in your own skin. You become both the prisoner and the guard in a jail of your own making. Every morning you wake up and immediately check, am I okay today? Are my thoughts acceptable? Are my feelings appropriate? Do I measure up to the standards I've set for myself? And when the answer inevitably falls short, the battle begins again. You criticize yourself for being anxious, then feel anxious about being critical. You judge yourself for having certain thoughts, then think more disturbing thoughts about your judgment. You resist feeling sad, then feel sad about your resistance. The cycles multiply endlessly, each one adding another layer of suffering to what began as a simple human experience. This is the trap that captures most people. They believe that self-improvement means self-attack. They think that growth requires harsh internal discipline. They imagine that strength means never showing themselves the same compassion they would naturally offer to a friend. But warriors know better. True warriors understand that the greatest battles are won not through force, but through wisdom. Not through resistance, but through acceptance. Not through fighting what is, but through transforming their relationship to what is. The ancient masters spoke of Wu Wei ineti, effortless action, flowing like water around obstacles, rather than crashing against them. They understood that nature never fights itself. Rivers don't struggle to flow downhill. Trees don't battle to grow towards sunlight. Birds don't force themselves to fly. Yet somehow you've learned to work against your own nature. You've been conditioned to see your natural emotional responses as problems to be solved rather than information to be received. You've been taught to view your authentic impulses as enemies to be conquered, rather than wisdom to be understood. Consider how you treat a dear friend who comes to you in distress. They're anxious about an upcoming challenge. They're doubting their abilities. They're feeling overwhelmed by life's demands. Do you attack them for having these feelings? Do you tell them they're weak for struggling? Do you criticize them for not being perfect? Of course not. You listen with compassion. You offer understanding. You remind them of their strengths. You help them see their situation from a broader perspective. You provide comfort and encouragement. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you treated yourself with this same kindness? When anxiety arises in your chest, do you greet it with the gentle curiosity you would show a friend? When self-doubt whispers in your ear, do you respond with the patient understanding you would offer someone you love? When overwhelm crashes over you like a wave, do you provide yourself the same steady support you would naturally give to others? Most people have become experts at external compassion while remaining complete novices at self-compassion. They can see clearly when others are being too hard on themselves, yet remain blind to their own internal cruelty. This is where the warrior's path begins, with the recognition that you cannot hate yourself into wholeness. You cannot criticize yourself into confidence. You cannot judge yourself into joy. The warrior's first practice is sacred witnessing, learning to observe your inner experience with the same detached compassion that a mountain shows to passing weather. Think of a mountain standing tall and steady through centuries of storms. Rain pelts its surface, winds howl around its peaks, snow blankets its slopes, lightning strikes its summit. Yet the mountain remains unmoved. Not because it's hard or unfeeling, but because it has learned to let all weather patterns pass through, without taking any of them personally. You can develop this same quality of spacious awareness. When angry thoughts arise, you don't become the anger. You witness it moving through the sky of your consciousness. When sadness wells up in your chest, You don't become the sadness. You hold space for it with gentle presence. This witnessing awareness creates what the masters called the sacred gap, the space between what happens and how you respond. In this gap lives your freedom. In this space exists your choice. In this moment dwells your power to respond rather than react. Most people collapse this gap instantly. Something triggers them and they explode into reaction before they even realize what's happening. They become like machines programmed to respond automatically to specific stimuli. But you can learn to expand this gap. You can practice creating spaciousness around your experience. You can develop the ability to feel whatever arises without immediately acting from that feeling. When someone criticizes you, instead of immediately defending or attacking, you can breathe. You can witness the hurt that arises. You can feel the impulse to protect yourself. And then from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction, you can decide how to respond. This is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. This is about developing the capacity to feel fully while choosing consciously, to be moved by your emotions without being controlled by them, to honor your inner experience without being enslaved by it. The second practice of the warrior is creating an inner sanctuary, a space within your own consciousness where you can always find refuge, regardless of what storms may be raging in the outer world. Most people build their sense of safety on external foundations. They feel secure when their relationships are stable, when their bank account is full, when their health is good, when their health is good, when their reputation is intact. But all external conditions are subject to change. All outer circumstances are temporal. The warrior learns to build safety from the inside out, to create an unshakable refuge in the depths of their own being, a place of unconditional acceptance where all parts of themselves are welcome, a sanctuary of understanding where every emotion is met with compassion. This inner sanctuary is not a place you visit occasionally when life becomes too difficult. It becomes your permanent residence, the stable ground from which you meet all of life's challenges. In this sanctuary, your anxious self is welcomed with open arms. Your angry self is met with understanding. Your sad self is held with tenderness. Your confused self is guided with patience. No part of you is ever turned away. No aspect of your experience is ever deemed unacceptable. From this place of complete self-acceptance, something miraculous begins to happen. The energy you were using to fight yourself becomes available for creating the life you truly want. The attention you were spending on internal conflict becomes focused and clear. The love you were withholding from yourself begins to overflow into your relationships with others. You stop needing others to validate your worth because you've learned to see your own value. You stop requiring external circumstances to make you happy because you found the source of happiness within. You stop depending on the approval of others because you've given yourself the approval you were seeking. This is the warrior's greatest victory, not the conquest of external enemies, but the befriending of internal experience. Not the elimination of difficult emotions, but the transformation of your relationship to them. Not the achievement of perfection, but the acceptance of your perfectly imperfect humanity. Yet this acceptance is not passive resignation, it's not giving up or settling for less. It's the recognition that true change happens through love, not through force. That lasting transformation emerges from acceptance, not from resistance. When you stop fighting your anxiety, it stops fighting back. When you cease attacking your sadness, it begins to reveal its wisdom. When you quit judging your anger, it starts to show you what boundaries need to be set. Every emotion carries intelligence. Every feeling holds important information. Every aspect of your inner experience has something valuable to teach you. But you can only receive these teachings when you approach your emotions as allies rather than enemies. The anxious part of you is trying to keep you safe by anticipating potential dangers. The angry part of you is trying to protect your values and boundaries. The sad part of you is trying to help you process loss and change. These are not malfunctions in your system. These are features working exactly as designed. But somewhere along the way, you learn to fear these natural responses. You began to see normal human emotions as evidence of pathology. You started treating your inner experience as a problem to be fixed rather than a guidance system to be understood. The warrior's path leads you back to this understanding, back to the recognition that you are not broken and never were, that your emotions are not enemies but teachers. That your challenging thoughts are not punishments but opportunities for growth. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of waking up each morning and asking, "What's wrong with me today?" you begin asking, "What is my inner experience trying to teach me?" Instead of fighting against what you feel, you become curious about what you feel. Instead of judging your responses, you begin investigating what they're responding to. The same energy that once created internal warfare now fuels internal wisdom. The same attention that was scattered by conflict becomes concentrated by curiosity. The same heart that was hardened by self-judgment becomes softened by self-compassion. You begin to treat yourself as you would treat your own beloved child, with patience when they're learning, with comfort when they're hurt, with encouragement when they're struggling, with unconditional love regardless of their performance. This is not weakness, this is the ultimate strength, the strength to be vulnerable, the courage to be authentic, the power to be human without apology. As you learn to befriend all aspects of your inner experience, something profound begins to shift in your outer experience as well. The relationships that were strained by your internal conflict begin to heal. Your capacity for genuine intimacy expands. Your ability to be present with others' difficulties increases. When you're no longer at war with yourself, you stop projecting that war onto others. When you've made peace with your own shadows, you can hold space for others' darkness. When you've learned to love yourself unconditionally, that love naturally extends to everyone you encounter. This is the warrior's true service to the world, not the elimination of all problems, but the modeling of a different way of being. Not the achievement of perfection, but the demonstration that imperfection can be beautiful. Not the conquest of human nature, but the celebration of it in all its messy, magnificent complexity. You become a living example of what's possible when someone chooses love over fear, acceptance over resistance, compassion over judgment. You show others through your very presence that it's safe to be human, safe to feel deeply, safe to be authentic. The anxiety that once seemed like your greatest weakness becomes the gateway to your greatest strength. The self-doubt that appeared to be your biggest obstacle becomes the doorway to your deepest wisdom. The emotions you tried so hard to control become the very forces that carry you home to yourself. This is the paradox that the warrior lives by. Surrendering the fight against yourself, you win the only battle that truly matters. By accepting what you cannot change, you gain the power to transform what you can. By befriending your inner experience, you become truly free. The path continues to unfold, revealing new depths of understanding and new opportunities for growth.
But now you walk this path as your own best friend rather than your own worst enemy. Now you face life's challenges with the warrior's greatest weapon, an unshakable love for the one who walks the path.
Your emotions are not problems to be solved. They are energy waiting to be transformed. This understanding separates those who remain trapped in cycles of suffering from those who learn to dance with life's natural rhythms. Most people spend decades trying to fix their feelings, control their moods, and manage their emotional states. They treat their inner world like a malfunctioning machine that needs constant repair. But what if everything you've been taught about emotions is backwards? What if anxiety isn't a disorder but information? What if sadness isn't depression but a doorway? What if anger isn't destructive but creative force waiting to be channeled? What if your most challenging emotions are actually your greatest allies in disguise? The ancient masters understood something that modern culture has forgotten. Emotions are energy in motion. They are not solid, permanent states but flowing, dynamic forces that move through the landscape of your consciousness like weather patterns moving across the sky. You don't try to stop the wind. You don't argue with the rain. You don't negotiate with the lightning. You learn to read the signs, prepare for the storms, and appreciate the sunshine when it comes. Yet with emotions, you've been trained to do the opposite. You've been taught to resist the rain of sadness, to fight the storms of anger, to hide from the lightning of fear. You've been conditioned to believe that only certain emotional weather is acceptable in the sky of your being. This resistance creates the very suffering you're trying to avoid. When you fight against the natural movement of emotional energy, you create internal dams that eventually burst. When you deny the validity of what you feel, you force authentic expression underground where it ferments into resentment, anxiety, and depression. The great misunderstanding of our time is the belief that emotional wellness means feeling good all the time. That mental health requires the absence of difficult feelings. That spiritual growth leads to a state of perpetual positivity. This is not wisdom, manners, this is emotional bypassing. This is not growth, this is avoidance. This is not strength. This is fragility disguised as toughness. True emotional intelligence doesn't come from controlling your feelings but from understanding them. Not from managing your moods, but from receiving their messages. Not from staying positive but from staying present with whatever arises. Think of a river flowing toward the ocean. When the path is clear, water moves gracefully, nourishing everything it touches. But when you build dams to stop certain currents, pressure builds behind the barriers. Eventually the accumulated force breaks through with destructive power, flooding areas that would have remained safe if the river had been allowed to flow naturally. Your emotions work the same way. When allowed to move freely through your awareness, they carry valuable information and then naturally dissipate. But when blocked by resistance, judgment, or denial, they accumulate pressure until they explode in ways that damage your relationships, your health, and your peace of mind. The ancient secret of emotional alchemy lies in learning to work with emotional energy rather than against it, to channel its power rather than dam its flow, to transform its raw force into creative expression, compassionate action, and authentic connection. This transformation happens through 4 fundamental practices that the masters called the pillars of inner relationship. These are not techniques to be mastered, but ways of being to be cultivated. Not skills to be learned, but attitudes to be embodied. The first pillar is presence over perfection. Most people approach their emotions like a gardener trying to force roses to bloom in winter. They demand that their inner landscape look a certain way, regardless of the natural seasons of the heart. But authentic presence means being with what is, not insisting on what should be. It means tending your inner garden according to its natural rhythms rather than your preferences. It means honoring the winter of grief, the spring of hope, the summer of joy, and the autumn of letting go. When anxiety arises, presence doesn't ask, how can I make this go away? It asks, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What does this energy want me to know? How can I be with this experience in a way that honors both its message and my well-being? This shift from fixing to feeling, from solving to sensing, from perfecting to presencing changes everything. Instead of being at war with your emotional experience, you become its compassionate witness. Instead of trying to edit your feelings, you learn to read them. Anxiety might be alerting you to a situation that needs attention. Sadness might be helping you process a loss you haven't fully acknowledged. Anger might be showing you where your boundaries have been crossed. Each emotion carries intelligence that becomes available only when you stop trying to silence the messenger. The second pillar is curiosity over judgment. Most people relate to their emotions like a harsh critic reviewing a disappointing performance. They analyze, evaluate, and condemn their feelings as if emotions were choices they made, rather than natural responses to life experience. But curiosity approaches emotions like a scientist studying a fascinating phenomenon. Instead of immediately labeling feelings as good or bad, right or wrong, healthy or unhealthy, curiosity asks, what is actually happening here? What am I experiencing in my body? What thoughts are accompanying this feeling? What might this emotion be trying to accomplish? This investigative approach transforms your relationship to difficult emotions from adversarial to collaborative. Instead of being the victim of your feelings, you become their explorer. Instead of being overwhelmed by emotional storms, you become fascinated by their patterns and purposes. Curiosity also reveals the temporary nature of all emotional states. When you observe your feelings with scientific interest rather than personal drama, you notice how they arise, peak, and naturally subside. You see that no emotion, no matter how intense, lasts forever. You learn that feelings are like visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and they leave. This understanding brings tremendous relief. The anxiety that feels like it will never end always does end. The sadness that seems bottomless always has a bottom. The anger that appears overwhelming always eventually subsides. Not because you forced these feelings to leave, but because you allowed them to complete their natural cycle. The third pillar is compassion over control. Most people treat themselves with a harshness they would never show to someone they care about. They speak to themselves in ways that would end friendships if used with others. They demand perfection from themselves while offering understanding to everyone else. But compassion means treating yourself as you would treat your dearest friend going through the exact same experience. It means offering yourself the same patience, kindness, and support you would naturally give to someone you love. When you're anxious, compassion doesn't say, you shouldn't feel this way. It says, of course you're worried. This situation is genuinely challenging. How can I support you through this? When you're sad, compassion doesn't say, get over it already. It says, your heart is hurting, and that's completely understandable. What do you need right now to feel held and comforted? When you're angry, compassion doesn't say, you're being irrational. It says, something important to you has been threatened or violated. Your anger makes perfect sense. How can we honor this feeling
while choosing a response that serves your highest good. This internal dialogue of compassion creates safety for all parts of yourself to emerge and be seen. When you know you won't be attacked for feeling, you stop hiding your authentic experience. When you trust that you'll be met with understanding rather than judgment, you stop performing emotional perfection. From this foundation of self-compassion, genuine healing becomes possible. Not the superficial healing that comes from suppressing symptoms, but the radical healing that comes from accepting the fullness of your human experience. The fourth pillar is trust over fear. Most people have learned to fear their own emotional intensity. They've been taught that strong feelings are dangerous, that passionate responses are inappropriate, that deep sensitivity is a liability.
But trust means believing in your nervous system's innate wisdom, trusting that your emotions evolved over millions of years to serve important functions, trusting that your feelings, even the uncomfortable ones, are part of an intelligent system designed to help you navigate life successfully. Fear says, these feelings are too much, I can't handle this intensity. Something is wrong with me for experiencing this. Trust says, my system is working exactly as it should. These feelings will not destroy me. I have the capacity to feel fully and remain whole. This trust allows you to stop micromanaging your emotional experience and start collaborating with it. Instead of trying to control every feeling, you learn to surf the waves of emotion with skillful balance. Instead of forcing feelings to be different, you learn to dance with them as they are. Trust also means believing in your own timing and process. Not everyone heals on the same schedule. Not everyone processes emotions in the same way. Not everyone expresses feelings through the same channels. Your path of emotional growth is unique to you. Your way of moving through difficult feelings is valid. Your speed of transformation is perfect for your particular constitution and circumstances. When you trust your process, you stop comparing your healing to others' timelines. You stop judging your emotional responses against external standards. You start honoring the wisdom of your own unfolding. These four pillars work together to create what the masters called the alchemy of transformation. When presence meets curiosity, awareness expands. When compassion meets trust, safety deepens. When all four qualities converge, emotional energy transforms from obstacle to ally. The anxiety that once paralyzed you becomes heightened awareness that helps you make better decisions. The sadness that once overwhelmed you becomes a doorway to compassion for others who suffer. The anger that once consumed you becomes fuel for positive change in your life and world. This is not about eliminating difficult emotions, but about transforming your relationship to them. Not about achieving emotional perfection, but about developing emotional fluency. Not about controlling your feelings, but about channeling their energy in service of your highest vision for your life. As you practice these four pillars, something profound begins to shift in your relationship with yourself. The internal critic that once dominated your inner dialogue becomes a curious observer. The harsh judge that condemned your every feeling becomes a compassionate witness. The anxious controller that tried to manage every emotion becomes a trusting participant in your own unfolding. You begin to relate to yourself the way the ocean relates to its waves. The ocean doesn't fight the waves, it is the waves. It doesn't judge the storms, it contains them. It doesn't resist the tides, it flows with them. You are the ocean of consciousness in which all emotions arise and subside. You are the vast skies through which all emotional weather moves. You are the eternal witness of all temporary experiences. From this expanded identity, emotional challenges become opportunities for growth rather than evidence of failure. Difficult feelings become invitations to presence rather than calls for escape. Intense emotions become gateways to intimacy with yourself rather than signals that something is wrong. You learn to trust the intelligence of your emotional system the way you trust the intelligence of your immune system. You don't panic when your body creates a fever to fight infection. You support the process. In the same way, you don't panic when your psyche creates strong emotions to process life experience. You support that process too. This transformation ripples out into every area of your life. Relationships deepen because you're no longer afraid of feeling deeply. Creativity flows because you're no longer blocking the energy that fuels inspiration. Decision-making improves because you're listening to the full spectrum of information your emotions provide. Your capacity for joy expands because you're no longer using energy to suppress sadness. Your ability to love increases because you're no longer protecting yourself from the possibility of loss. Your courage grows because you're no longer afraid of your own fear. You become a complete human being rather than a carefully edited version of yourself. You show up authentically in your relationships because you've learned to be authentic with yourself. You offer genuine presence to others because you've learned to be present with your own experience. This is the ancient secret that transforms everything when you stop fighting your emotions and start feeling them. When you stop judging your experience and start trusting it. When you stop trying to be perfect and start being present. You come home to the fullness of who you are. You are not broken. You never were. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. You are not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, an artwork to be created, a song to be sung with all the notes, both sweet and sorrowful. The anxiety you feel is not your enemy but your teacher. The sadness that visits is not your weakness but your depth. The anger that arises is not your flaw but your fire. All of it belongs. All of it serves. All of it is part of the magnificent symphony of your becoming. This is your invitation to step into the fullness of your emotional birthright, to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide, to celebrate the intensity you've been told to diminish, to honor the sensitivity you've been encouraged to suppress. You are ready. You have always been ready. The only thing that was ever needed was your willingness to turn toward yourself with the same love you naturally offer others, to meet your own experience with the same compassion you show to friends in crisis, to treat your own heart with the same care you give to precious things. The path home to yourself has always been through yourself. The love you've been seeking has always lived within you. The peace you've been chasing has always been your natural state beneath the storms. Come home. Come home to the fullness of your feeling. Come home to the truth of your being. Come home to the love that you are.